Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. You ready to learn some more cool stuff today?
Always ready.
Well, today we're diving into hydroponics.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah. And I gotta admit, just the name hydroponics sounds a little sci-fi to me. Growing plants without soil, I mean, come on.
Right, it does sound pretty futuristic.
But our listeners are clearly interested in it, so we gotta find out what the hype is all about, right?
For sure. And you know what's interesting about it is that it's not actually a new concept at all.
Oh, really?
Yeah, ancient civilizations like the Aztecs, they were already practicing hydroponics in a way with those floating gardens they had.
Huh. So it's not just some crazy new invention after all.
Exactly. It's more like we're rediscovering ancient wisdom and combining it with modern technology.
I like that.
Yeah.
So basically, hydroponics is like growing plants in a special water solution instead of soil.
Yep, that's the gist of it.
And the sources we looked at described all sorts of different methods, like some use gravel or coconut fiber, and others just have the roots hanging right in the water.
Right. There are a lot of different techniques, but they all come down to giving those plants the perfect nutrient mix in a really controlled environment.
It's like choosing your own adventure for plants.
Exactly. You can customize it to fit any space or need, whether you're thinking small scale like a balcony garden or a massive high-tech greenhouse.
Okay, I'm starting to get why people are so into this, but let's get real for a sec. Why should our listeners actually care about this whole hydroponics thing?
Well, think about it. Our global population is exploding, right?
Oh yeah, it's getting kind of crowded down here.
That's putting a ton of pressure on our food systems. We need to produce way more food.
Yeah, the sources said something like 70% more food by 2050.
Exactly. And that's where hydroponics comes in. It has the potential to really change the game.
Okay, so how exactly can it help us feed all these extra mouths?
Well, first of all, it lets us grow more food in less space, which is huge, especially in urban areas.
Yeah, space is definitely at a premium in cities.
And it uses way less water than traditional farming.
Oh, that's important.
Plus, it's more resilient to climate change, so we can grow food reliably even in tough conditions.
So it's not just some cool gardening trick. It's a potential solution to some really big problems.
Right. It's about food security, sustainability, and even tackling climate change head-on.
I like the sound of that. The sources also mentioned some pretty impressive advantages, like better water and nutrient use, faster growth, and higher yields.
Yeah, those are some of the big benefits.
Let's start with the efficiency thing. How's hydroponics more efficient with water and nutrients than regular farming?
Okay, so in traditional farming, a lot of water and nutrients just get wasted. They seep into the soil and disappear.
Makes sense.
But with hydroponics, the plants get exactly what they need, delivered right to their roots. And the water is constantly being reused, so there's almost no waste.
So like a closed loop system, huh?
Yeah,
Everything's carefully controlled and recycled.
exactly.
That's pretty awesome. And I bet that controlled environment also helps with the faster growth and bigger harvests that the sources mention.
Oh, absolutely. By controlling the temperature, the light, and the nutrients, you're basically creating the perfect little world for those plants to thrive.
It's like a plant spa.
Haha, yeah, you could say that.
The sources even mention that lettuce can be harvested in just 30 days with hydroponics. That's crazy fast.
Yeah, it's almost twice as fast as traditional methods.
So you could practically have a new salad every month.
Pretty much.
And speaking of control, the sources also talked about how hydroponics is basically climate-proof. You can grow food year-round no matter what's going on outside.
Yeah, that's a game changer for farmers in areas with extreme weather.
I can see how that would be super appealing. No more worrying about frost or drought or crazy heat waves.
Exactly. With hydroponics, you're in charge.
Right.
You get to create the perfect microclimate for your plants.
That sounds pretty empowering.
Yeah.
And on top of all that, the sources said that hydroponics uses way fewer pesticides and herbicides.
Oh, yeah, that's a huge benefit for our health and the environment.
I mean, who wants to eat food that's been doused in chemicals?
Right. And since hydroponic systems are usually closed off, they're way less vulnerable to pests and diseases in the first place.
So you don't need to use all those harsh chemicals.
It's a win-win for everyone.
Okay, so far so good. Hydroponics sounds pretty amazing.
It definitely has a lot of potential.
But I'm sure there are some downsides too, right?
Yeah.
Nothing's perfect.
You're right, there are some challenges.
Like what? Spill the beans.
Yeah. Well, next time we're going to talk about the challenges and disadvantages of hydroponics, as well as some real-world applications of this technology.
Sounds good. I can't wait to learn more about this. Stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back after a short break. Okay, so before the break, we were talking about all the awesome upsides of hydroponics.
Right, like how it saves water and helps us grow food in all kinds of crazy places.
But like we said, nothing's perfect.
Sure, that.
So let's get into the nitty-gritty. What are some of the downsides of hydroponics?
Well, one of the big ones is the cost.
Money talks.
Yeah, setting up a hydroponic system can be pretty pricey, especially if you're thinking big, like a commercial operation.
Yeah, the sources mentioned all sorts of fancy equipment, pumps and lights and sensors and stuff.
Exactly. All that stuff adds up. It's definitely more complicated than just digging a hole in the ground and throwing some seeds in.
That's for sure. And what about the technical know-how? Do you need to be some kind of plant whisperer to make this work?
Well, there is definitely a learning curve, but it's not rocket science.
So you don't need a PhD to grow some tomatoes.
Nope. There are tons of resources available to help you get started. Online courses, YouTube videos, even books.
Okay, so it's more accessible than it seems at first glance.
Definitely. And the technology is getting easier to use all the time.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
But I got to ask about something that kind of freaked me out when I was reading the sources. What happens if the power goes out?
Ah, yeah, the dreaded power outage.
I mean, your whole setup relies on electricity, right?
It does. But there are ways to mitigate that risk.
Like what?
Well, for one, you can have a backup generator just in case.
Smart thinking.
And there are also ways to design systems that use gravity to help with water flow. So even if the power's out for a little while, your plants might be okay.
Okay, that makes me feel a little better. But it sounds like you got to be prepared.
For sure. It's always good to have a backup plan.
All right, so we've talked about the cost, the technical stuff, and the power outage issue.
Yeah.
What else should people know before they dive into hydroponics?
Well, it's important to think about the specific environment you're working with.
You mean like if you're in a tiny apartment versus a sprawling farm?
Exactly. The scale and complexity of your system will depend on your space and your goals.
Right, so someone growing herbs on their windowsill won't need the same setup as a commercial grower supplying a whole supermarket.
Exactly. Luckily, there are hydroponic solutions for pretty much every situation.
Okay, let's break it down. What would you recommend for someone just starting out? Maybe they live in a small apartment and don't have a ton of space.
In that case, I'd say start small and simple. Focus on plants that do well in containers, like herbs, lettuce, or even strawberries.
Yeah, those sound perfect for a beginner. And what about the actual setup? Are there any methods that are particularly good for small spaces?
Definitely. The wick system is super easy to use and doesn't take up much room.
And I think the sources also mentioned something called NFT, right?
Yes, nutrient film technique. It's really efficient in terms of space and water use.
Sounds fancy. And if you're really tight on space, you could go vertical, right?
Exactly. Vertical gardens are a great way to maximize your growing area.
So many options.
Yeah.
Okay, what if you have a bit more space to work with, like maybe a house with a backyard or a patio?
Then you can start thinking about slightly larger systems like drip systems or even aquaponics.
Wait, aquaponics, that's the one with the fish, right?
Yeah, it's a super cool system where you basically combine fish farming with hydroponics.
So the fish waste fertilizes the plants. That's amazing.
It is. It's a really sustainable and efficient way to grow food.
And for those who are really serious about hydroponics, the sources talked about hydroponic grow tables, which sound pretty heavy duty.
They are. They're basically like raised beds, but with all the bells and whistles of a hydroponic system.
Sounds like you could grow a whole feast on one of those.
Pretty much. And for large-scale operations, hydroponic greenhouses are the way to go.
Yeah, those are super impressive. They can control the climate and grow all kinds of crops year-round.
Exactly. And there are some really innovative techniques being used in large-scale hydroponics.
Like what?
Well, one popular method is called deep water culture, or DWC.
DWC.
I like it. It's all about giving those plant roots a nice oxygen-rich bath.
Sounds relaxing. And it's especially good for leafy greens, right?
Yeah, it helps them grow super fast.
And another method the sources mentioned was substrate hydroponics.
Yep, that one uses things like gravel or perlite to support the plants.
So it's kind of a hybrid between soil and water-based growing.
You could say that.
Wow, it's amazing how far this technology has come.
It really is, and I think we're just getting started.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, from tiny apartment setups to massive greenhouses.
We've explored the pros and cons, the different methods, and the sheer potential of this incredible technology.
But before we wrap things up, I want to touch on something the sources mention about the future of hydroponics.
Ooh, yeah. What does the future hold?
Well, it sounds like things are about to get even more high-tech with AI and smart sensors coming into play.
I've heard about that. Imagine a system that can basically take care of itself. adjust the nutrients, monitor plant health, even predict problems before they happen.
That's mind-blowing. It's like having a personal plant doctor on call 24/7.
Exactly. And that level of automation could make hydroponics even more accessible and efficient.
I can't wait to see what the future holds. But with all this talk about technology, it's important to remember that there's a human side to this too, right?
Absolutely. As hydroponics becomes more widespread, we need to think about the social and ethical implications.
Like how it might affect traditional farmers or food security in different parts of the world.
Right, these are big questions that we need to be asking ourselves.
So it's not just about growing more food. It's about growing it in a way that's sustainable and equitable for everyone.
Exactly. We need to make sure that this technology benefits all of humanity, not just a select few.
Well said. This deep dive has been a real eye-opener for me. It's made me think about food production in a whole new way.
Me too. It's been fascinating to explore the history, the science, and the sheer ingenuity behind hydroponics.
And for you listening, we hope you've enjoyed this journey into the world of soilless growing.
Whether you're a seasoned gardener or a curious newbie, we encourage you to keep learning and exploring.
There's a whole universe of possibilities out there.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe one day we'll all be growing our own food in our living rooms.
Now that's a future I can get behind.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into hydroponics. Until next time, happy growing, everybody.
Yeah, and it's not just about the technology itself, it's about how we use it.
Right, we got to make sure it benefits everyone, not just a select few.
Exactly. It's about creating a more sustainable and equitable food system for all.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Well, this deep dive has definitely been a wild ride for me. It's made me rethink the whole idea of food production.
Me too. It's incredible how innovative humans can be when faced with a challenge.
Seriously. From ancient floating gardens to high-tech greenhouses, hydroponics has come a long way.
And it's only going to get more exciting from here.
I can't wait to see what the future holds. Maybe we'll all be growing our own food in our apartments someday.
Now that's a future I can definitely get behind. Fresh, local produce right at your fingertips.
That's the dream.
Yeah.
And, hey, even if you don't have a green thumb, hydroponics is something worth learning about.
It really is. It's a glimpse into a future where technology and nature can work together to feed the world.
Beautifully said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into hydroponics, everybody.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, happy growing.